Om. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tat Padam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vedya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we've been dealing with this very important section on vasana. Shankara says the annihilation of the vasanas here and now is considered steady wisdom by the wise. How do I know if my mind is covered by vasana? When I think I'm a person, when I'm identified. If I think I'm a person, I'm deluded. If, on the other hand, I know that I am Brahman, for that moment my mind is clear. And last week we had this marvelous image of the moss, clearing the moss on the tank. Those moments when it's clear, but if there's still vasana, the re-identification comes back. All right, next verse, please.
So 326, is that right?
I think so.
Vishayeshva Vishaschetah Sankalpyati Tadgunan Samyak Sankalpanat Kamaha Kamat Pumsah Pravartanam. When the mind enters the sense objects, it reflects upon their qualities. From mature reflection arises desire. After desiring, a man sets about to gain that thing and thus fulfill his desire.
Yes. So we interact, we perceive the sense object. Then my mind engages with that. It thinks about it. And then that brings about desire. And then I set about the course to achieve it. So we can review the technology of desire. So again, we have the appearance of the sense object. I think about it. I determine that that sense object is dear to me. kriya. Then what do? I acquire it. I get proximate to it. I buy it. I marry it. I earn it. I get the advancement, etc. Whatever I do to get the approval, the money, whatever it is, that's called moda, M-O-D-A. And I'm proximate. I'm close to the object of desire. And when desire and object of desire become one, pramoda, the point of pleasure. At that point, for a moment, the craving, the longing, the vikshepa shakti stops. Feels good, because the mind is no longer under the throes of rajas. It's no longer under the throes of that vikshepa shakti. For the fool, in my ignorance, I then attribute that happiness to the object. That's the mechanism that then creates a vasana, which makes me want to repeat the activity. And then remember previously when we discussed this, Shankara used the metaphor of the silkworm. One vasana, no big deal. Could bust that easy. Another vasana, yeah, you get lazy. Then another one, and another one, and another one. And the next thing you know, the mind is cocooned. And what's the end result? Non-apprehension of myself as pure existence, consciousness, and the source of all happiness. It's not a moral issue in any way, shape, or form. It's purely mechanical. Any thoughts on this before we go on?
Jim,
Yes.
I was heard that isn't the sattva a type of asana, Pakriti?
No? I
No?
don't know. Is sattva a type of vasana?
Yes.
Impure sattva, when it's mixed with rajas and tamas, there's still ignorance.
Yes, but sattva itself is pure being.
But
Yes.
pure sattva means the
Yes.
mind is clear. The
Okay,
mark of a purely sattvic mind is that you have knowledge of yourself.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Very good question. Very good question.
Because I know they can mix with each other, the tamas, rajas, and sattva.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Any other ones? All right, next verse.
लक्ष्यच्युतं चेद्यति चित्तमीषत् बहिर्मुखं सन्निपेतत्ततस्ततः प्रमादः प्रच्युतः केलिकन्दुकः सोपानपङ्क्तौ पतितो यथा तथा. If the mind ever so slightly strays from the ideal, sorry, I went backwards. ततस्वरूप विभ्रंशो विभ्रष्टस्तु पतद्यदः पतितस्य विना नाशं पुनर्नारोह ईक्ष्यते संकल्पं पर्येत् तस्मात् सर्वानर्थस्य कारणम् अपथ्यानि हि वस्तूनि व्याधिग्रस्थो यथोत्सृजेत्. Through inadvertence, a man may deviate from his real nature. The man who has thus deviated falls. The fallen comes to ruin and is rarely seen to rise again. Therefore,
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Therefore, just as the eatables prohibited by the doctor are not taken by the victim of the disease, one should totally give up the habit of reflecting upon the sense objects, which is the root cause for all the mischief.
Yes. So the idea here is, in preparation for the discussion we're going to have later on samadhi, Shankara is teaching us how to keep the mind intensely introverted, tuned up at meditation, not letting it gush out into the objects of the senses. Now, in the beginning, you may only be able to do this for a few minutes. If any of you have taken a Buddhist retreat, like a Vipassana or a Zen retreat, I've never done a Vipassana one, but a Zen retreat, you sit for a while and then you have a walking meditation. And you're supposed to try to keep your mind in that very still place and just simply walk in a circle, keeping it very, very quiet. These are rudimentary attempts to achieve what Shankar is talking about. When I was doing my sadhana, I would go through Golden Gate Park. The ashram was just a block from the park. I just try to tune up my mind and just look at all the things in the park. Again, trying to keep this total equanimity, this deep introversion, no thoughting. For many of us, we only can do it for maybe 5-10 minutes at a time. But you extend it further and further. The price is you have to give up your concern for the world. Doesn't mean we don't do our activity. But your ego will tell you, well, I can't stay tuned up. I've got to engage in the world and do this sort of stuff. And no, you don't need to do that. Mind can be incredibly empty. And you can still function in the world. Now, this is where hanging with the Guru can be of incredible benefit. My friend Vilasana used this expression that Swamiji used to just suck us in. So when a student was ready for this, he would frequently keep you nearby. And if you had the ability to tune to him when you were around him, help keep our minds in that state of constant meditation. Whatever information comes, positive, negative, drop it, drop it, drop it. What causes me to come out of that state? My attachment for the world. So this is real sannyas. Sannyas for the Westerners means renunciation. We usually think of sannyas as becoming a monk, wearing the orange. I'm a sannyasi. But real sannyas is interior. It's I have given up my concern for the world. Now, some people may have an experience. They think, oh, I realize now, and it's all an illusion. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if my mind extroverts into the world. That's just a mind state. Samadhi's just a mind state. And at one level, that's true. But if you start to extrovert into the world, remember that law of sankalpa, what you put your attention on, starts to concretize. It becomes reified for you. The next thing you know, your knowledge is covered again. There you are, a bogey, out there in the world, suffering like an ordinary person. You may be thinking, oh, when I was doing intense sadhana last year, I was so peaceful. What happened? Your mind got extroverted. It's that simple. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
अतः प्रमादान्न परोऽस्ति मृत्युः विवेकिनो ब्रह्मविदः समाधौ समाहित सिद्धिम् उपैति सम्यक् समाहितात्मा भव सावधानः. Therefore, to the discriminating knower of Brahman, there is no greater depth than inadvertence to meditation. But the man who meditates regularly attains complete success. Therefore, carefully meditate upon Brahman in your mind.
So here it's not only having your sitting practice. By now you should be doing a minimum 20, 30, 40 hours a day. If you can do an hour, that's great. If you can do an hour twice a day, that's excellent. More than that, you need not do unless you're doing a retreat. If you can get an hour a day in, marvelous things will happen. But in addition to that, practicing this meditation in action. What do we mean by meditation? Keeping the mind intensely introverted, letting it abide in the self, not letting it extrovert into the world. If you do not meditate, you are a scholar. That's a good thing. But you're not a yogi. Next verse.
जीवतो यस्य कैवल्यं विदेहे स च केवलः यत्किञ्चित् पश्यतो भेदं भयं ब्रूते यजुश्रुति. He who is completely aloof, even while living, is alone really aloof after the dissolution of the body. The Yajurveda declares that there is fear for one who sees even the least bit of distinction.
Yes. So this idea of aloof or aloneness, it's the understanding that there's only one here. There is no otherness. So religious people who think if I do ritual and I'm just a good person, then I'll be liberated after I die. Shankara is saying, you have to be liberated right here. right now. Tune up the mind. Keep it introverted in the sound. Finish this business. Let go of the world and its illusions, its temporary and little joys and sorrows. Next one.
Yada kada papi vipashchidesha brahmanyanante apyumatre bhedam apyanumatra bhedam pashyatya pashyatyathāmushya bhayam tadaiva yadvikshitam bhinnataya pramadat. Whenever the wise man recognizes even the least difference in the infinite Brahman, at once that which he sees as different through mistake becomes a source of fear to him.
Yes. So, constantly maintaining not only this understanding, I am that witnessing consciousness. I am ever the knower of the body, mind, and intellect, and the ego sense. But what is this world? This world is like a dream. The names and forms are mithya, illusion, vaitatya, falseness, pratibimba, reflections. It's nothing but consciousness, vibration held together by thought. There's nothing substantial out there. The names and forms are just transparency. What's there is Brahman. It's all God. It's all good. All is Maya. All is bliss. And if you forget, tune up. Remember who you are. Remember what this world is. Next one.
Shruti smriti anyaya shataihi nishidhe drishyेत्र yasvatmamatim karoti upayiti dukkopari dukkhajatam nishiddhakartam sa malim lucho yatha. He who identifies himself with the objective universe, which has been denied by hundreds of shrutis, smritis, and reasonings, suffers one misery after another, like a thief, for he indulges in something forbidden.
Yes. So make sure that you don't get involved with some particular addictive relationship with something in the world. Because you will begin to be a sufferer again until you finish the job. Inadvertence is always mantra. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is illusory. Don't get involved. Interesting, entertaining. It's a light show. It's a video game, but it's not real. You are real. Next one.
सत्याभिसन्धानरतो विमुक्तो महत्त्वामाप्यम् उपैति नित्यम् मिथ्याभिसन्धानरस्तस्तु मिथ्याभिसन्धानरतस्तु नश्येद् दृष्टं तदेतत् अध्यतचो प्रचोरयोः. He who devotes himself to meditation on the reality and is free from nations attains to the eternal glory of the Atman. But he who dwells on the unreal is destroyed. That this is so is illustrated in the case of one who is not a thief and one who is a thief.
I forget the meaning of the allusion to the thief and the not thief. Can you see it there in the commentary, Ganesh? Can you share it with us?
It only says an honest man and a dishonest cheat are the examples for both the above cases. Basically, one who's devoted to constant reflection on the reality, and the other um, who dwells on the unreal.
Yeah. So you don't want to delude yourself. You don't want to cut corners. You don't want to be a cheat. Who are you cheating? Yourself. Finally, let go of the delusory idea that anything in this world can give you anything enduring. Let go of any idea of self, family of origin, caste, color, gender, job, education, ability or disability, age. None of it is true of you. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Next one.
यतिरसद् अनुसन्धिं बन्धहेतुं विहाय स्वयमयं हमस्तिमीत्यात्मदृष्ट्यैव तिष्ठेत् सुखयति ननु निष्ठा ब्रह्मणि स्वानुभूत्या हरति परमविद्या कार्यदुःखं प्रतीतम्. The sadhak should give up dwelling on the unreal, which causes bondage, and should always fix his thoughts on the Atman, as this I myself am. For steadfastness in Brahman gained through the realization of one's identity with it, gives rise to bliss and thoroughly removes the misery born of nescience, which one experiences in the state of ignorance.
Yes. Yes. So give it up the world, give up our rumination over it, give up our identifications, keep the mind absorbed in Brahman. Tejamayananda talks about the three R's. They're not reading, writing, and arithmetic. Renounce, realize, revel in your self nature. It's funny. Uh, in the Christian church, we just went through the three holiest days, what they call the Triduum, the 3 days, three duum, 3 days. And on Good Friday, they read the Passion according to John from the Gospel of John. And there's this marvelous dialogue between the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, and Jesus. And of course, Jesus is accused of calling himself king, king of the Jews. And other people called him that. He never said that. So Pilate says, are you a king? And Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. Pilate says, don't mess with me. Do you not know that I have the power of life and death over you? He says, you would have no power if it were not given to you from above. Then the conversation goes on. And finally, Pilate asks him, what is truth? And in the scripture, there's no answer. But my imagination is Jesus looked right into his eyes, had that marvelous thing, sometimes we call it drishtipat, flow of Shakti through gazing at someone, tunes Pilate up, puts his mind in meditation, gives him that taste, mind reveling in the self. Pilate goes out and says to the crowd, I find no guilt, I find no fault in this man. It's just a wonderful interaction that you see about this magic that can happen between the teacher and the taught. We begin to learn to keep the mind so intensely empty. Shunyata. Absolutely. Next verse.
Bahya anusandhihi परिवर्धयेत् फलं दुर्वासनामेव ततस्ततोऽधिकां ज्ञात्वा विवेकैः परिहृत्य बाह्यं स्वात्मानुसन्धिं विदधीत नित्यम्. Constant contemplation upon the external objects will only gather up its fruits. that is, enhancing the evil propensities which grow from bad to worse. Knowing this through discrimination, one should leave the thoughts of external objects and constantly apply oneself to meditation on the self.
Yeah. So one of the things Justin, who's here in class, has shared with us, which I think is a beautiful practice, is not only do we think of who am I, but also who cares. It's a great, great little mantra to drop the world. When I'm upset, who cares? Oh, it's just a stupid ego. Drop it. Let go. Understand that if I'm suffering, I want something. It's the wanting itself that is my suffering. What does it feel like to want something you don't have? Or the flip side, to want to be rid of something you don't like. Vedanta says there's no other suffering. Now, physical illness, let's put that on the shelf. That's not what afflicts most of us. It's vancha. I want.
They're saying the only true suffering is a desire.
Suffering is, a desire is suffering.
Desire is
Wanting something hurts.
Yeah.
And the more I want it, and the more the object is unavailable, the worse the pain is.
Well, you could apply that to physical illnesses too, couldn't you? Like, I want to be free of this illness.
But for now, I'm not going to deal with that because the physical illness
I was just
not necessarily caused by the fact that I've got this illusion. In the end, if you're a good yogi, you can move through physical pain with no trouble.
Yeah, but okay.
Most people don't kill themselves because they've got a toothache.
Yeah, but there's more. Okay. Yeah.
So, we can just put that on the shelf. It's in the end, you're absolutely right. It's just another form of it. But if the body's diseased, go to the doctor. But if you're suffering because you're wanting, that's a little bit different situation. Is that a little clearer, Justin?
Yes, but I mean, like, I've dealt with all kinds of medical issues that aren't the doctors can help me with, is what I'm saying. So it's
and then you have to learn acceptance.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, which is nothing but a desire.
Yeah.
So that's what I was saying. But my apologies. Wasn't very rude.
No, it's fine. It's a good point. But that's what's so hard for us to get. Ego says, I'm suffering because I don't have what I want. Yoga says I'm suffering because I'm compulsively wanting, because I have the deeply rooted belief that I need the stuff. Any other questions or comments? So the two things you want to pay attention to. What does it feel like to want something I don't have? It hurts. I think many of you have heard me say my nickname from my mind was Mudha when I was in the ashram doing sadhana, because there I was wanting again, all the stupid wanting, and it's so repetitive. It is so repetitive and so stupid. I'm suffering. Tell me it's the first time you've had this feeling. Aren't you tired of it? Give it up. Let it go. And then pay attention to happiness when you get what you want. Own it. It's a taste of your own self-nature. It's not in the object. You've just used the object. to induce that state. That's all that happens. If you want to go into this more completely, go back and review the section on the Maya Kosha. That's when we discuss this most completely. All right, next verse.
Bahye niruddhe manasa prasannata manah prasade paramatma darshanam tasmin sudrishte bhavabandhanasho bahir padavi vimukte. When the objective world is shut out, the mind becomes quiet, and in the quiet mind arises the vision of the Paramatman. When that is perfectly realized, the chain of births and deaths is broken. Hence, the shutting out of the external world is the initial step for reaching liberation.
And this shutting out of the external world, we can interpret it in two ways. Of course, in meditation, I shut out all my thoughts about the phenomenal world. But while I'm functioning in the world, I let go of my belief in its reality, in its import. My senses report a phenomenal world, but my knowledge is Brahman. Just like my senses report the BART tracks they join in the distance, but my knowledge is they're parallel, it's a vanishing point. My senses report the bowl of the sky, but my knowledge is actually the blueness of it is just refracted light through the atmosphere. My senses report ships falling off the edge of the world when I'm watching out from Ocean Beach. My knowledge is no, they're still on the ocean. It's the curvature of the earth that causes that illusion. All the time, my senses report illusory things. All my senses report is the world of imagination. Don't take it seriously. Next one.
Kaha panditah sansada sadviveki shruti pramanah paramarthadarshi jananhi kuryadasato palambam swapataheto shushuvan mumukshu. Where is the man who, being learned, able to discriminate between the real and the unreal, believing the Vedas as authority, fixing his gaze upon the Atman, the supreme reality, and being a seeker after liberation, will, like a child, consciously run after the unreal, which will surely cause his fall.
So, for the person who is convinced of the truth of the path and who's had some taste of the glory of the mind abiding in the self, why would he go after the world, knowing what it will do? Those of us who've gone through 12-step stuff, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or something like that, one of the slogans you'll see on the walls in the rooms is think, think, think. And the invitation is to think the drink through. So you're out with a bunch of friends and they're all going to have wine for lunch. Well, they're normal people. They can have half a glass of wine. They pour a glass of wine and leave half of it. If you're an alcoholic, you know, well, I never had half a glass of wine. That half a glass is going to lead to more and more, and then I'm on another run, and then I'm crashing and burning, and I've wrecked my life again. Think it through. No, I don't want that. So Shankara is saying we do the same thing with the world of name and form. Our friends are saying cars, grinder or tender, spend money, QVC, gambling, so many things out there. They seem to be having fun. And I'm just a renunciate yogi. I'm not having any fun. Think it through. Do I want their suffering? Have I had at least a taste on occasion of this deep peace? Yeah. No. Give that up. Now more intensely introvert the mind. Twofold process. Give up, give up, give up. And turn the mind within. Turn the mind within. Turn the mind within. So here Shankara says, when you find your mind thinking, oh, about the world, what do the scriptures say? What do the great sages say? What's been your own learning? Give it up. Give it up. Any thoughts?
Hey, Jim, this is David.
Hi, David.
Hey, so I'm noticing the thing that gets me more than anything is my family, right? In terms of just like feeling that attention just go out into the world. And, especially for my daughters and my wife and kind of whatever's going on with them at the time. And I just wanted to see if you have any thoughts on how to, I guess it feels there's something it tells me that like doing my duties not enough. Like I have to be like emotionally invested there. And I noticed that kind of coming up for me as we go that, and that's just so automatic for me.
It's not automatic. Well, it is automatic because it's habitual and it's instinctual. Understand that. That the instinct to love your children, to love your wife is how nature keeps your genes propagating. So it's very, very strong. So cut yourself plenty of slack. But, I wouldn't worry about it unless something is causing you to suffer. Love your family. Try to love them unconditionally and not have conditional love. I'll love you if you behave. I'll love you if you pay attention to me. Don't worry about it, David. Don't worry about it. But if, God forbid, how old are your kids now?
They are 5 and 8.
Well, they're old enough to start to have personalities of their own. Are they doing things that concern you, make you frightened or angry or stuff like that?
Well, yeah, they certainly make me angry from time to time.
They certainly make you what?
Angry from time to time, and sometimes frightened. When they do something that seems to be dangerous.
Yeah. Now, your emotions there, that's an indication of your attachments. I'm not saying not to take care of them. But can you give them to God? Our children do not belong to us, they come through us. But you can figure this out. You can figure this out.
Sure. So one thing that I'm curious about on this is, so it seems like, the positive, the positive emotion, these loving feelings, right? You're suggesting, don't worry about that. That's not
Keep
to be
owning it.
worried about, right?
The love you have for your daughters and for your wife is really a taste of your self nature.
So I guess there's a concern that I had is that that's a place where I'm kind of, that there's potential for attachment and vasana.
What I would invite you to do is rather than withdraw from your family, try to make everyone and everything your family. Expand that sense of love.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a dog?
No.
Oh, okay. I was saying you love the dog the way you love your kids.
Well, I could practice on my my parents and in-laws, though. That would be a good next step.
Especially mother-in-law. They write jokes and stories about this relationship,
Yes, yes.
So
well, thank you.
I remember what Jesus said. I say to you, love your enemies. Even the Gentiles love their friends. I say, love your enemies. So this was St. Francis's way. So you have my daughters, my wife. I am related to them. Francis went brother, sun, sister, moon. And of course, his greatest fear and aversion was leprosy. He was horrified, terrified of leprosy. And his moment of realization down below Assisi was a leper colony. And he went down there, and at first he would eat with the lepers. Then finally he went up to this gross person with, pus and stuff coming out of their face and kissed the man on the mouth. In an effort to love that leper the way you love your children. That's the kind of path I would recommend for you. Don't withdraw your love from your family. But try to love without attachment. Believe me, you'll get a lot of practice on that as soon as they become teenagers.
Yes, I've been hearing stories from some folks with teenage girls.
My brother had 3 girls, and his greatest fear is that they would meet a boy who was like him when he was their age. Because he did not treat women with a lot of respect. That's all I will say about that. And you'll have to learn to let go and be detached, yet continue to have discipline. You'll get a chance to do a lot of yoga.
Yep, I'm sure.
And
Yes,
maybe
they are great teachers. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's a good practical direction as I try and stay tuned up throughout the day.
Does your love for your children, does it bring you great joy?
Absolutely.
That's a taste of God. That's a taste of your self-nature. They are your icons. You know what an icon is?
I'm thinking of I'm actually thinking about that picture above your head right now.
Yeah, that's an icon. But what you're supposed to do is look into its eyes. You look through the icon to God. Not the painting. It's a doorway into something deeper. So let your wife and children be icons. Another face of God.
I like that. I'll take that on.
Yeah. There's one way of looking at it, of this absolute non-involvement and detachment. But remember, we also say Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. It's all God, it's all Brahman, everything. And if that works better for you, go into it. Just don't limit your love to those three women.
Mm-hmm.
Let me show you something. So think of one of your daughters right now. Close your eyes and just think of her. And think of a particular moment when you were just filled with so much love for her. Can you feel it?
Yes.
Okay. Is she there in the room with you right now?
No.
So you made it all up. Do you see that? You used imagination to induce a feeling. It's you. You literally used memory, imagination to induce that state of love. It's you. It's just, do you see how that for sure was just an imagination? Can you see that?
I definitely see that it's it is imagination. Yes.
The love is real. The love is you. It's your self-nature. It's a taste of your self-nature. But if it's limited to a particular person, then you're limiting your access to it. Very, very good question. Anybody else have a question on that? All right, next verse.
Dehadi samsakti matona muktihi मुक्तस्य देहाद्य भिमत्य भावः सुप्तस्य नो जागरणं न जागृतः स्वप्नस्तयोर्भिन्नगुणाश्रयत्वात्. There is no liberation for him who is attached to the body, etc. And the liberated man has no identification with his body, etc. The sleeping man is not awake, nor is the waking man asleep, for these two states are contradictory in nature.
So if you are sound asleep, you are not aware of the waking world. If you are wide awake, you are not aware of the dream or the sleep world. Likewise, for the person in ignorance, his ego seems real, and the world is like a siren. Come to me, I'm where all the joy is. But for the woman of realization, aham brahmasmi, I am that partless Brahman. Chidananda rupaham, I am of the form of bliss consciousness. Shivoham, Shivoham. I'm Shiva, I'm auspicious. Mutually exclusive. Either see it or you don't. Next one.
अन्तर्बहिः स्वं स्थिरजङ्गमेषु ज्ञात्वात्मनाधार तया विलोक्य त्यक्ताखिलोपाधिरखण्डरूपः पूर्णात्मना यः स्थित एष मुक्तः. That man is free who, knowing the self through his mind in all moving and unmoving objects, and observing it as their substratum, renounces all superimpositions and remains as the absolute and the infinite self.
Yes. So, no matter what's going on, and by the moving and the unmoving world, all the objects, emotions, and thoughts, seeing those as just the divine play, the Leela, the hologram, the cosmic video game. But stay rooted. I am that partless Brahman, unthinkable, never sullied, beyond action, desire, grief, anger, never touched by it. Just watch the movie. Just watch the movie. All right, this is a good place to stop. What number are we on?
340. We will be starting 340 next week.
340 next week. Okay, we have time for some more questions. No questions? No comments? All right, let's sit. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Practice this meditation. Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om. That's it. Thank you all.
Thank you, James.
Good night.
Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ganesh.